Hello everyone, today's poem is Xiaoya, Sanghu, a Xiaoya poem from the Book of Psalms. This is a very typical poem about a happy dinner with many laws, very probably associated with the grand ceremony to heaven, to their ancestors. The wording and the poem is quite simple and not long, but even the main subject is quite clear, the happy dinner with many laws, but the details still arouse a lot of argument through the histories because quite a few words or characters is not or it was explained with many arguments, like the title Sanghu. Sanghu, the general idea is a type of bird and which was lived on meat. And in another poem in the Book of Psalms, it points out very clearly. It's not point out, it's just indicate 交交桑扈率场着力. So if it's a bird, the title Sanghu is a bird, it was lived on grains of the crops, not on meat, not on insects. Anyhow, this explanation as a bird was only valid in the text or in the sentence in the Book of Psalms. We have some, not so much, but we still have a bunch of literatures from the time long time ago, and all the other literatures, they don't have this term or interpret this term as a bird, like in 楚辞, the most ancient famous poet in the Chinese history, Qu Yuan. He has one of the poems, 涉江, and has the sentence 桑户裸行. So in this sentence, it was explained as a person. So that person walked around naked, 裸行, walking naked. And Sanghu was explained as a people's name. Well, there could be so many other possibilities because the character Sang and Hu has a very, very valid meaning by itself. Sang, the mulberry tree, the most important tree in the history, and it's the leaves of mulberry to feed the silkworm. So you know how important the silkworm to China, to even to the world. And Hu means the door, the half of the door. So the in ancient China, the door was in two pieces. So half of the door was so-called as Hu. And the place where the Zhou capital located was called as Hu as well. It has two types writing. So if you went to that place today, maybe most probably you'll see this term, rather the character writing this poem. But in the history, the two terms is identical, and they both refers to the same place. And so the door could be represent a house of a big temple, a house of someone's house. So if we treat it that way, Sanghu could refer to a big temple and surrounded by the mulberry trees, or a house surrounded by the mulberry trees. So in the sentence of 楚辞桑扈裸行, so it is quite clear. Someone walked naked in his own garden, in his own house. And that's the story about. And the story is telling someone walked naked in his house. And when we retrieve the history, there's some very, very famous things with mulberry trees. And the founder of the Shang dynasty, Tang, when he founded the dynasty, 5 consecutive years there's no rain. So you know what that means to Chinese. It means hungry, starving. And the king decided to devote him to the heaven as a sacrifice. So with this sacrifice, everybody hope there will be rains afterwards. And the place he hold this ceremony is a forest of mulberries. So there's a word, 汤岛桑林. So this is a delicate idiom for these events. He sacrificed himself in the mulberry forest. And so this is the dynasty before the Zhou dynasty, before the Book of Songs. And there's a lot of the records that finally the forest of mulberry became the place of making love in the springtime. 2 of the very famous history figure was clearly recorded that their mother got pregnant in the mulberry forest. One is Confucius. His father and mother make love in the forest of mulberry and had him then. Another one is 大禹. 大禹 is the person who fixed the Yellow River, which is always flooding every year and has so great damage to the people. So he fixed it and he became a king of that time. He was a much ancient figure to Zhou dynasty, before Zhou dynasty. And he made his love with his wife on Sangtai, on a high plateau covered by the forest of mulberry. What's more, the sound of mulberry in Chinese is the same sound as death or funeral in Chinese. And so this could be a long word to funeral, to death. And even when the panel for the passed away ancestors was made of the wood of mulberry wood. So that's all the connections this mulberry could have. And so I think it has a great chance that the title refers to the ground temple where could hold the ceremony to ancestor, to heaven, where could hold big dining parties, where could hold meeting for state affairs. And in this poem, of course, it's a grand ceremony to heaven, to ancestors, together with a dining party. Let's see. The first paragraph. 交交桑扈，有莺其羽，君子乐胥，受天之祜. So I will explain 2 ways First, the general explanation. The second, I will treat Sanghu as the house, the place, the temple surrounded by many mulberry trees, the family's temple, the temple for heaven. Okay, the first explanation. 交交桑扈，有莺其羽. The bird of Sanghu, they're flying back and forth, cross over, and their wings is with very colorful pattern, nice colorful pattern. So 交交 means the crossover, so which means many birds, they are flying back and forth and cross over. So that's a very lively scenic. Ying means the pattern, the colored pattern. Yu, of course, the wing. So the first sentence means the birds flying back and forth and cross over, and their wing looks so beautiful with their colorful patterns. 君子乐胥，受天之祜. The lords, they feel very happy, and they are protected by the heaven. Okay, that's all the above is the first explanation. If we treated the Sanghu as the family temple, the temple of heaven, so we should explain the second way. In the family's temple, the roof of the temple and the mulberry trees, they are crossed over and covered everywhere. And there is a bird of ying, is flying with his wind. Yu here is a verb which means to flying with the winds. So ying refers a type of birds. So in the today we still have this usage, 黄莺, so that's one of the bird. 君子乐胥，受天之祜. There's a second argument of mine. 胥, if we look to the most ancient form, so it's composed of a piece of meat, carne, and with some other things. In the first explanation, normally it explained as has no meaning or means everybody. So it doesn't change too much. The Lord was happy, or every Lord is happy. But I think it should be explained or could be explained another way. 胥, the very original word, is a piece of meat with another component, and the sound was from the another component, so the meaning most likely is related with this piece of meat. So when we refer to some other explanations for the very ancient time, it could refer to the musicians. Of course, the musician could be related with a piece of meat, because in the grand ceremony, the musician is a critical part. And the meat, of course, in most cases, the meat was always the sacrifice to their ancestors or something very, very good. So with this argument, we can explain the sentence another way. 君子乐胥 or 君子乐胥. 乐 means they play the music, and they make the sacrifice offering with meat. And so this is a ceremony, right? They play music to please the heaven, to please their ancestors. They offer the meat, a piece of meat, to please the heaven, to please their ancestors. And that's quite reasonable, followed by the last sentence, 受天之祜. with all the offerings, with all the efforts, with the pleasant music, well, the heaven was so pleased, and our ancestors are so pleased. So we are, on the contrary, was protected, was blessed by the heaven. So which way is more reasonable? It's all up to you, because the explanation to the Book of Songs is a task never ended. Okay, the second paragraph is quite similar to the first one. So two way of explanation, the general explanation. The bird of Sanghu, many birds are flying back and forth and cross over, and on their neck has a very fine, nice looking pattern with color, and all the lords are very happy, and they are the shield for the whole country. So they some characters, Ling means the neck or something followed. Wanbang is a general term to refer the whole country, 10,000 states. So basically it's always mean the whole country. Ping, the shield, the protection. So this is the first explanation. So with my argument, that it could be explained this way. In the family's temple, the mulberry tree and the roof of the temple, they are crossed over and covered everywhere. And we are under this temple's roof, under the very prosperous mulberry trees. There is some bird, and his neck is very, very somewhat. So I cannot explain. Maybe it refers a bird. Some bird is the leader, is leading other birds flying somewhere and flying back and forth. Very likely it refers some birds, they are leading other birds flying in this space around the family temple. And this is also a very good metaphor to that of the king of Zhou and other junior lords, the state's lords under him. Okay, the next sentence is basically the same. The lords, they offer the meat, they play the music to please their ancestors and heavens, and they are the shield for the whole country. They protect, it's them, they protect the whole country. Okay, the third paragraph. 之屏之翰，百辟为宪. The king is the shield of the country, and all the lords under him followed him as he take him as an example. 不戢不辍，受福不那. We wish all the lords would never need to take their weapon to face a war, and they would never need to face a disaster. 集 means to collect all the weapons together, which means a war. They are facing a war. 不辍 means they don't need to face a disaster from the nature, from the heaven. 受福不那. So they always accepting all kinds of fortune and happiness, and that would never stop. The last 不那 very likely is a long word of this one, but in the Zhou time they they could be very likely could be the only word, but in today they could be, if we're writing in the modern Chinese, we should say it's a long word, and this could be explained as something fallen down, and 不挪 means the fortune. They accept a lot of fortune, a lot of happiness from the heaven, which would never stop, which would never fallen down from their hands. So the third paragraph actually is describing all the laws in this big party, in this big ceremony, and they are the foundation, they are the pillars of this country, and they all followed the king of Zhou, 百辟为宪. And the P is a very interesting word here. So here we interpret 百辟 as hundreds laws, P as the laws, state's laws. And P where originally means to cut, to behead someone in the ceremony as a sacrifice. So that's a very, very ancient traditions. So in the Zhou dynasty, P most of the time it refers to the lord. 百辟 means hundreds of laws, and sometimes P was explained as law. So that's derived from the very original meaning, to behead, the sacrifice, because the power of the Lord is from all those sacrifice, beheading the enemies or whatsoever, and also the law is from the power. So that's a very ancient tradition. You can see that in many ancient cultures, to sacrifice with enemies. Okay, the fourth paragraph. 司觥其觩，旨酒思柔. 司觥, you can see a lot of these vessels in the museum in China, and this is the vessel to hold the wines. So here, this sentence 司觥其觩，旨酒思柔 means if you are a vessel, 司觥, you always mean to ask something, 求, you ask something, 求. And for the Zhou people, it's not it means they always ask to the heaven, to ask to their ancestors. So here, the metaphor here is, you are the laws, you are the Zhou people. You should remember, always pray to the heaven, and thus you would be blessed by the heaven, by your ancestors. Thus you could have a happy life. 旨酒思柔, good wine. When you want to drink some good wines, you always mean to have the very mild and very soft wines. 柔, very soft and mild. 旨酒, the very high quality wine. So here it means it used the wine as a metaphor to the behavior or your character a lot should have. You should always be gentle. You should be always mild. So here it paralleled the laws in this grand party, in this grand ceremony, and warning them that as far as you want to be a fine gentleman, a lord, you should, like the bronze vessel 司觥, to always pray to your ancestors, to heavens. And if you want to be the best quality wines, you should try to to make yourself as mild, as gentle as you could. Okay, the last sentence. So this last sentence continues the warning to the laws. 彼交匪敖，万福来求. The friendship, the meet up with all these laws is not for entertainment. It's for the sake, for the fortune of us. We come here to pray for the fortune and happiness for all of us. 交 means to meet up, to cross over. So this has some of the parallel to the first sentence. 交交桑扈, the mulberry trees and the roof of the temples, they are crossover. They are meeting up with each other. And so this all make this grand party very lively and happy and dynamic. So 交 means the crossover, meet up of all the hundreds of laws in this grand party. So we meet up here is not for the sort of the entertainment. All, of course, is sort of the entertainment. We are not quite sure. Maybe they are singing song out loud, or maybe the dance, sort of the dance. Actually, I cannot find out the real meaning. But in another poem, you can see the quite similar words here. In 被封百州，威我无久，以傲以游. So 傲 is something parallel or similar to travel around to make someone happy. So here, 彼交匪敖 tell us very clearly that the big party is not just for simple happiness, for the entertainment. 万福来求. So it's actually, the sequence should be 来求万福. We come here is to beg, to pray 10,000 of fortunes. For whom? Of course, for us, for the hundreds of laws, for the king of Zhou. Okay, so basically this is a quite simple poem, and but this poem has many characters explained with arguments. So my arguments here is 桑扈. I gave a very detailed explanation on that. The second is 莺, is a bird, and the third is the character 觑, 君子乐胥 or 君子乐胥. And the fourth is the 求, 司觥其觩. I have my own explanation. And the fifth is 彼交匪敖, the whole sentence. So if you see other explanations quite different from my explanations, but when we're reading the poems, we should treat the whole poem as a whole. The Zhou people, they are very with extremely strict logic and with extremely precise of writing. The problem for us is a lot of the characters, actually, we may lost the real meaning of that. And especially the Zhou people use a lot of the long words. And on the other hand, we don't quite know the lifestyle and or even the way of thinking of Zhou people. Even we think we know a lot, actually we don't. So this is why it's so hard to explain the poems in the Book of Songs. But first thing first, the logic, you should build the logic based on the whole poems, not one paragraph by one paragraph. You should, the consistency is through all the poem. And the second thing is use the knowledge we have today, the geographic knowledge, the archaeology findings of today, and then try to confirm every detail or the new explanation you have. And I think there's still a lot of work to explain the poems in the Book of Songs. And I do believe there are so many poems are explained not very well. So I think if anybody who are interested on this, you could try your part, and then someday where we might be more close to the very original meanings when the Zhou poet wrote it. Okay, that's for today. Bye bye.